Welcome back to our series where we are revisiting the invention of photography and the stories of the people who helped make things happen. As this is part 13 of the series, if you missed the first episodes, you may want to pause this video and start from part 1. In this episode, the foundations for cinematography are laid. With cities beginning to clean up their act with regards to sanitation, scientifically, Pasteur had been hard at work on preventing disease and comes up with a vaccination against rabies. The automobile was invented by the Germans, and Serbian-American Nikola Tesla patents the alternating current induction motor and licenses it to Westinghouse Electric. Closer to home, Evergreen Cemetery begins development and the first burial takes place. Apparently, to this very day, people are still dying to get in there. The next 10 years introduces some interesting developments as well as some interesting characters and a person of important historical significance as far as the advancement of photography is concerned. At the age of 20, English photographer born Edward James Muggeridge immigrated to the United States in 1850 as a bookseller. In 1860, he was headed back to New York from San Francisco and was involved in a serious stagecoach crash and suffered rather extensive head injuries. From this point forward, it was said that he had a markedly changed personality. He recovered back in England, but returned to San Francisco in 1867. During his absence from the States, he learned wet plate photography, and when he returned, he made images of Yosemite Valley. In May of 1872, he married Flora Shallcross Stone. I can only guess that Muybridge spent a fair bit of time in the field photographing, as in 1874 he shot and killed Major Harry Larkins, whom Edward caught fooling around with his wife. Interestingly enough, a jury found him not guilty and that Muybridge committed justifiable homicide. Flora and Edward separated and Flora died a year later, leaving a son to Muybridge, who eventually placed him in an orphanage. This allowed Edward to focus more intensely on his photography. In 1872, one Leland Stanford, a rich railway tycoon, racehorse owner, and the person whom a California university is named, hired Muybridge to help settle a wager he made with his colleague as to whether or not all four of a horse's hooves are off the ground at some point during a gallop. He worked for years on developing a high-speed photography and used a 24-camera setup. On October 19, 1878, Muybridge's series of photos were published in Scientific American, proving conclusively that all four of a horse's hooves were off the ground. He also invented a zoopraxiscope, which allowed silhouettes of his images to be viewed. It was essentially the first precursor to a movie projector. This is the series of 16 photographs that Muybridge made and that were published in Scientific American in 1878. Images 2 to 4 clearly show that all four of the horse's hooves are off the ground. As an aside, this is also an example of levitation photography. Czech painter, comic artist, printer, and photographer Karl Václav Klich was working on a way to significantly improve the quality of images that were reproduced through mechanical printing methods. In the 1860s, he ventured out to try to make a living as a lithographer and owned his own print shop in 1863. He moved around, got married, and tried his hand at a number of things, including satirical cartoons similar to the editorial cartoons found in newspapers today. In 1870, he founded another magazine and was interested in improving the image quality of photographs being published. Plates of the era were wood engravings. A chance discovery late one evening led him to inventing photogravure, an intaglio process, where a 6-step process etched images into a copper plate. Wells of varying depths held different amounts of ink. Pressure applied to paper helped the ink wick out of these wells. The process eventually morphed into round copper cylinders from flat plates, and rotogravure printing is used to print long-run publications involving millions of copies. These are the steps involved in the photogravure process. Pause this video if you would like to read them. If you would like to see how an actual print is made, please use the link bit.ly /P photo R retro number 18 for a film by Lang who goes through the process so that you can better visualize things. Arguably, the most famous photographic figure in the world of photography as a whole, American George Eastman, was a bank clerk who had a keen interest in photography. His upbringing was no picnic, as his father died of a brain disorder when he was 8, and one of his older sisters, Katie, died of polio when Eastman was 15. His mother had to take on boarders to help make ends meet, and George left school as well in order to help support his family. While working at a bank, he began to have some success as a photographer. In 1879, he invented and patented a machine for coating and making dry plates. 2 years later, George founded the Eastman Dry Plate Company, along with Henry Strong, in order to make and sell dry plates. Eastman was the treasurer, he did work in a bank after all, and Strong was the president. Interestingly enough, a competitor of Kodak, Ilford of the UK, was founded in 1879 and also made dry plates initially. We'll talk a bit more about George Eastman soon. For now, let's recognize that he donated over $100 million during his life. He also was not without historical controversy, as people have looked back in retrospect on the company that he guided for many years. Muybridge wasn't the only person who was studying the motion of animals. French scientist, physiologist, and chronophotographer, a photographer that records the 4 phases of animal movement, Etienne Jules Marey started off studying blood circulation in 1859. He co-developed the first mechanical device to measure blood pressure. He was also interested in the flight of insects and birds. In 1873, he independently said that a galloping horse would have all 4 hooves off the ground for a brief moment while galloping, and he too was proven correct when Muybridge had his photos published in Scientific American. Inspired by Muybridge, he continued looking into ways to photograph at high frame rates in order to better understand how various birds and animals moved. In 1882, he made his first chronophotographic gun, an instrument that could make an impressive 12 images a second. These were multiple exposure photographs, and all 12 images were recorded on a single frame of film. Using this invention, he went on to study dozens of animals and insects. He was also the person who studied how cats always land on their feet. For their efforts, Muybridge and Marey are considered pioneers of cinema. This is what Marey's chronophotographic gun actually looks like. On October 10, 1884, the world's oldest and still surviving weekly publication devoted to photography published their first issue. Amateur Photographer Magazine, or AP for short, could be purchased for 2 pence, or the equivalent of £1.17 today. Just a little while ago, it celebrated its 130th year of continuous publication. Many renowned photographers over the decades have been contributors to this publication. Please join us next time when we get railroaded, show how persistence pays off, the Wizard of Menlo Park makes an entrance, and we get a divine solution and more. We look forward to you being with us.